Good morning, my boys. So, welcome back to our YouTube classes. Today, uh, it was scheduled. The class was dedicated to answering the questions asked by you in the WhatsApp group. But you have asked no questions about English, no questions on this subject, and that is why we have obviously nothing to answer. So we shall resume our reading lesson 8. On the earlier occasion, on the last occasion, I told you about the life of this famous poet of his time, that is William Cowper. And I told you that we should discuss about his works in the later classes, in the next class. So, today it is our opportunity to discuss about his literary works. Cooper's, as I have told you earlier, Cooper started writing mainly in the later part, in the last 2 decades of his life. Cooper's most significant literary work was done in the last 2 decades of his life. ভাবা যায় একটা লোক সারাটা জীবন কাটিয়ে এসে after spending almost entire part of his life started writing poems. And when he started writing poets, যখন তিনি লেখা শুরু করলেন, after that he did not survive for a long period of time. He survived only about 20 years. In 1780-81, he wrote a series of reflective essays in couplets. It was the beginning of his significant literary work. It was the beginning of his life as a poet. In 1789-81, Cooper wrote a series of reflective essays in couplets. The essays are written in couplets in poetry form. Okay, it's something very unusual. It is something very unique. In 1782, he composed the immensely popular John Gulpin's Ride. This is his most popular work, most popular long poem, John Gulpin's Ride. He composed this poem in 1782, and in this poem he burlesqued the heroic ballad. He composed the poem in heroic ballad form. Okay, এটা একটা টার্ম, সাহিত্যের একটা বিশেষ ধারা, হিরোইক ব্যালাড। এই ফর্মে তিনি লেখেন ব্যাপারটা। And this composition was a very significant one in his career as a poet, because it made him one of the most prolific poets of his time. It gained a great popularity and fame for him, and he began to be considered one of the greatest poets of his time. You do not know, but the students of English literature know it very well, that the most famous poet of 18th century is Alexander Pope. But he was not of that sort. Cooper did not write according to the style set by Alexander Pope or earlier John Dryden. I have told you, he was something unique in his time. That is why he is called the precursor to the Romantic Revival in English literature. And John Gulpin's Ride was a famous poem written by him only because he broke through the style, the gharana, যাকে আমরা ঘরানা বলি আর কি, the style, the form set by his predecessors of 17th and 18th century. In 1783, Cowper began his curious long poem, The Task. It was a very philosophical poem, The Task. And this is, in my opinion, the greatest work ever created by William Cowper. It was published in 1785, which begins with a mock elevated disquisition on the historical evolution of the sofa from the humble three-legged stool. The subject is also very curious. It deals with the evolution of a stool to reach the destination of being a comfortable sofa set. Something ridiculous apparently, but I have told you, this is, in my opinion, is his greatest literary work, and so it must not be a ridiculous one. It deals with a very philosophical subject, philosophical apprehension. Okay. It treats a multitude of descriptive and reflective subjects, and in probably Cowper's most typical poem. In my opinion, it is his most typical poem. It talks about Cowper's own personality. It talks about Cowper's poetic dogma. It talks about his philosophy of life. In it, quiet meditation is mingled with atmospheric description of simple rural life and placid natural sense. That is also absolutely typical of Cowper. In the task, we have a great description, simple, placid, very calm and quiet, rural, rustic life. And he always indulged himself in such an atmosphere. He loved to write about this topic, and that is why this poem is a typical poem written by him. Between 1784 and 1791, Cowper translated Homer. You know the name of Homer, who wrote Iliad and Odyssey. Cowper made a translation of Homer's works. You do not know. It was done earlier by Alexander Pope. I have just mentioned the poet's name sometime before. Alexander Pope, the most famous poet of 18th century England, also translated Homer. And after that, in between 1784 and 1791, Cowper also translated Homer. But though Alexander Pope and Cowper both made the translation of these great poets' works, Cowper's works is also a unique work of art, as it demonstrated his opposition to the artificial elevatedness of Alexander Pope's version. Cowper always thought that in Alexander Pope's translation there is an artificial elevation. In fact, Alexander Pope often indulged himself in writing mock epics. If you do not know mock epics, still I am telling you just to get you interested in future. So he was used to writing he was very keen on writing very elevated things in mock style, in a style of mockery. Okay, and that is why Cowper opposed it, not verbally, not in a very but through his poems, through his translation of Homer. He made it very calm and quiet. One could get the flavor of Homer in his translation. Anyway, in 1799, Cooper wrote the somber poem, The Castaway. This is a, what should I say? It will be a bit gloomy. Every reader must be very gloomy whenever they read this poem, The Castaway, which is a study of human isolation and has poignant religious overtones. His isolated life, his uh, nervous mental setup, and his religious faith got mingled in this poem, and that is why it touches our mind. The poem touches our mind, but at the same time it also created a sort of gloom in us, among us. So Cooper was one of the best and most prolific letter writer too. Oh, I forgot to tell you. Cooper was a very, very prolific and famous letter writer. Perhaps you find it something peculiar that I am telling about letter writing. Is letter a part of literature? Yes, my children. Personal letters are often a part of literature. You know, John Keats was a great letter writer. Carlyle also wrote very, very touching letters to his relations. And William Cooper also wrote very good letters. He was a famous and prolific letter writer, personal letter writers. He also composed the texts of many well-known hymns, stotra, praise, a poetry praising someone, especially the God. আমরা যাকে ভক্তিমূলক স্তোত্র বলি তাকে ইংরেজিতে hymn বলে, HYMN. He composed the texts of much popular hymns. In our literature, in Bengali literature, we find hymns written by very, very famous poets like Rabindranath, Atul Prasad, Kamalakanto Sen, that is Ram Prasad. We know. So he composed a number of hymns too, including There is a fountain filled with blood, God moves in a mysterious way, and oh, for a closer walk with God. These are the names of some hymns written by William Cooper. So, he was not only a famous poet, but also a prolific hymnodist, 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 stotro lekhak. Okay, so this is something about the literary works of William Cooper. তোরা কতটা কি এনজয় করলি আমি জানি না. I do not know how far do you enjoy the information, but I think if you can keep it in your memory, it might be helpful in your future life if some of you go for studying English literature. So now it's time for us to begin the poem, The Snail. We have discussed about the poet's life. After that, we have also talked about his works, and now we must begin reading the poem The Snail. Again, like the cat, here also, before the noun snail, there is a definite article, the. এখানেও দ্য ক্যাটেও আমরা দেখেছিলাম, আমি তখনও বলেছিলাম তোদের যে ক্যাটের আগে দ্য রয়েছে, কোনো সিঙ্গুলার নাউনের আগে দ্য ডেফিনিট আর্টিকেল রয়েছে, মানে সেটা গোটা স্পেসিসটাকেই বোঝাচ্ছে। It refers to the entire species. Here also we have a definite article the before snail, and that is why it also refers to the entire species of snail. যে কোনো স্নেলকেই এটা বোঝাচ্ছে, পুরো স্নেল জাতিটাকেই এটা বোঝাচ্ছে। সো দ্য নেম অফ দ্য পোয়েট, দ্য নেম অফ দ্য পোয়েম ইজ দ্য স্নেল। শামুক আমাদের ভীষণ চেনা প্রাণী, খুব নিরীহ প্রাণী, খোলার মধ্যে থাকে। অ্যান্ড নাও we have to start reading the poem, but it will be done on tomorrow. We have to do it tomorrow.